Silence, golden. Sorry about that. There was a background noise which we just could not understand. I just worked out what
Ah,
it could
okay.
have been. Like, yeah, I sorted that out. Anyway, how have you been, sir? Have you been okay?
I've been good. Yourself?
Ah, busy, 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 running around like a headless chicken, as usual.
Yeah, I know what you
So I
mean.
understand. Yeah, absolutely. You know what, Elliot? You have been sending quite a few messages about questions that you have been getting. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
hoping that some of the questions you've researched yourself and answered, or you still want to go
yes,
through all.
yeah.
Eh?
Some I have, yeah. Some I've. It's quite difficult to decipher the right answers from the
That's
wrong ones online. But a few
that
I
is
have.
that is true. That's excellent. That's excellent. Actually, you know what? I was telling Muhammad. I said, you know what? Having had a look at the questions that you had sent over, I was
Yeah,
telling Muhammad. I said, you know what we will do, because we want to go into the answers in a detailed way. So if it is
yes,
okay
yes.
with you, what we will do is we'll cover 2 or 3 questions per session. So I'm looking at potentially 3 sessions with you, if it is okay with
Okay,
you. Yeah. In that
that's
way, we can
fantastic.
go. Yeah, we can go into detail rather than having short answers. And you know what happens with short answers? Once we have gone off and you are sitting comfortably at night, suddenly you are replaying and questions start arising, and you think, I should have asked him this.
Yeah,
I should have asked him that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
That's usually what
yeah.
happens.
Exactly. So it is better we can over a 3 or 4 programs, we can actually go into detail about the answers and the questions so that we get a better
Yeah,
understanding of the subject matter. Yeah. Now I was
yeah,
having a look at the thing, and the first question that you had asked is, did God create man or did man create God?
yeah. Because online, there's there's so much information backwards and
Yes.
forwards.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost. So I thought that question probably is best for you.
Yeah. And you know what, Elliot? I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, you know what? That is an ideal title for a book.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah. So if we publish one, any royalties, we will send some to you. But actually, you know what? It hits at the center of the most important question. Yeah. Because we have got understanding today to the extent that we've never had before. And logically, that's what would happen the more we find out.
Yeah,
Yeah. But if I were to ask you, when you are asking the question, did God create man or did man create God? What is
yeah.
the thinking behind the question?
It, there's so much noise from atheism that
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of it now online. There's quite a few famous ones that are regularly you see right across YouTube, and they're constantly saying that the theist, the burden of proofs on, they make the claim, they have to prove it, and that's the end of it. So
hmm,
they say that this idea of God, whether the thousands of different concepts,
yeah,
descriptions of God, even the Islamic one or the Hindu ones, it is have a basis in primitive thinking of in our evolution. That's where it began, and it is man-made
hmm,
until that's what they're constantly putting out there. So
yeah,
because there's thousands, there's Krishna, you could say, Yahweh, there's Aurora Mazda. They will list hundreds, and
yeah,
they say they're all man-made. So
yeah.
it's I want to, if you can help me narrow that down, because of it
Right.
would
Okay.
be good.
Right. I understand. Yeah. I don't know if you have had an opportunity to watch the last video we put up in Hyde Park, Speaker's Corner, about two
Yeah,
weeks ago. Yeah.
yeah, I see
And
that one.
you've seen that one, right? Excellent. So
Yeah,
I put out what I consider to be a vibe that, look, when I look at atheism, it is actually a primitive method of trying to understand things. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I said, and that's what I intimated, and I am actually standing by that. That to consider atheism as a means to understand is a very primitive way. Yeah. What I mean by that is this. You see, if I were to say that a person going back 2,000-3,000 years ago says he believes in something,
Yeah.
and he restricts himself only to believing that without wanting to potentially, explore other avenues, even though those avenues he has come into an understanding about them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you following? Yeah. Now,
Yeah.
if he insists on only holding his position without even potentially considering anything else, would that not be considered primitive?
It would. Yeah.
Yeah. What I mean by that is that if 3,000 years ago that's the view that was held, and that view is still held today, it would be considered primitive. And I would suggest that atheism as a whole is extremely primitive when it comes to that. Yeah. So, as an example, the claim, whoever makes the claim, the burden is on them.
Yes.
Okay, not a problem. Okay. But if I am going to want to provide the necessary evidence for the claim, I need to know what standard I need to meet.
Yeah.
It is as logical as that. Okay. Now, over our videos over the past 4 or 5 years, not one single atheist, and I don't mean to belittle atheists, I'm not saying it because of that, but the truth of the matter is, not one atheist has been able to give me a standard by which to measure what they are requesting. Yeah.
Yes.
It comes back to what I was talking about when I said, can one conceive of something inconceivable? Okay. I mean, there has to be a logic.
It's impossible.
Sorry?
It's impossible.
Right. But here is an issue now. Okay. If we were to consider the evidence that is available, okay, and we have to go on the understanding of the researchers, and those very researchers will tell you, they will tell you very clearly, we are not talking about absolutism here. Okay. The more information we glean, the more our understanding will get better, and then we may perhaps arrive at a conclusion that collectively can be accepted. Yeah. So if I were to say that right now, if I were to take, the creator out of the picture, yes, the creator, when I use the word creator, I mean the creator who initiated everything, who is the point of origin for everything in existence. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we were to remove that, then we are back to what I've always discussed, even at Speaker's Corner, about the naturalistic interpretation of how we are here. Yeah?
Yes.
So now, if we were to take the question that you asked about, this is all man-made, okay? We now have a bit of a conundrum which we need to face. Yeah? This being that if our existence is based on how the evolutionary standards had been set, and via our evolutionary history we have arrived at where we are today, then it necessarily means that what we consider or what we have named to be the brain, BRAIN, also had a development over time.
I agree. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, are you familiar with that?
Yes. I like the cranial capacities grew.
Exactly, right. The cranial capacity grew. But here is an issue that we need to ask ourselves. If I am asking the question today, can we conceive of something inconceivable? With our cranial
Yeah.
capacity to the extent that it is today, we are not able to answer this. But then there
No.
is an additional issue here. If we are going to regress back, yes, the suggestion is around between 2 million to 800,000 years ago, yes, the brain capacity started increasing. Yeah, it started on its journey to what we consider to be full capacity today, although it is
Yeah.
not definitive. Yes, there is a possibility, according to the research, there has been a slight decrease actually in brain capacity. Okay, but it might
Yeah,
increase.
I've
Who
seen that.
knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we know that at that time, whatever the brain capacity was, could only allow the kind of information that was coming through the senses.
Right.
Are we following? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Excellent. Yeah, it is, I think so, because we are all speculating on what actually happened. Okay. Now,
Yeah.
the point, yeah, the point I'm making, Elliot, is that wait a minute. If today we don't have the capacity to answer this question, then logic would dictate that it was impossible for one with a minimal cranial capacity to be able to ask that same question and answer it.
Yeah.
Are we following the logic? Please, if
Yeah.
you disagree with me, please. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I am suggesting that if that was the case, and if we are going to suggest that whatever those particular human beings or whatever our ancestors were, they had to either using the senses come to the realization. Now, when I say come to the realization, it is a sort of natural understanding after having considered things around them. Are you
Right.
following? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, if that is the case, then it becomes almost impossible to understand how they would have conceived of an inconceivable being unless there was some kind of direct communication.
What about that? Makes sense to
Yeah.
me. But
Good.
the atheist will, from what I normally read on, the atheist will usually say, it's a combination of false ideas that have grown over time has brought us to
Yeah.
where we are. No, so even though we can think of God, there isn't one. It's a combination sort of thing
Yeah.
over time. That's what they
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, that's understandable. But here is an issue. You see, if it was as a result of experience, and that's what it is, okay, we
Yeah.
are back to the question about prior experience. Yes? How can you conceive of something that you had not experienced? So,
Right. Okay.
are you following? Now, if I were to
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
wait a minute, is just a combination of cultures, intermixing, etc. Yeah, and a
Yes.
picture was built up. Yeah, so somebody says to me,
Yeah.
he had 15,000 hands. Another one said he had 20,000 heads, and I'm sat here. I put them together and say, hey, presto, I made another new one. Okay. Now, the first question I would ask is, how do you know that he had 15,000 hands? How do you know he had 20,000 heads? Yeah. I mean, these are questions you have to ask. We can all speculate and just come to a conclusion, but the conclusions have to be reasoned. And from my perspective here, and I mean this with the greatest of respect, when atheists talk, I honestly, they come across as extremely primitive in their understanding and thinking. Okay. Like I said, I'm talking about what they know and not the persons themselves. Yeah. So
Yeah.
if I take it further and I say, right, wait a minute. So it is a question of accumulated understanding.
Accumulated knowledge or information, yeah.
Yeah, accumulated understanding. After having obtained the knowledge, they are arrived at an understanding.
Yeah.
The question I've always asked and still seeking an answer is, if there was no information for that kind of being, where did that information come from? I'm simplifying it. Where could
Yes.
information? Yeah, you see, it is a bit of an odd one here. Yeah, we know that neuroscientists who are working on ideas about how religion plays a part in human beings and what areas of the brain suddenly get fired, okay, when
Yeah.
somebody is thinking about what you consider to be a spiritual element. Yes, they have found certain areas
Yes.
of the brain firing, just like certain areas of the brain will fire also when you are doing something very good. Yeah, it elicits this goodly feeling. But the question is,
Yes.
we have to step back and think, wait a minute, what you are showing us is what is already a result after previous experience being taken into consideration. So even if we accumulated all this information that our brains consist of, or rather have, yes, it is still based on our experiences. Now, there is an understanding that around 200,000 years ago, the brain came into full capacity, yes, and the very idea of spirituality also started arising. Yeah. Now, not in the very distant past, okay, but the issue still remains. We can talk about spirituality in its many manifestations, not a problem, but the central question is about a god, gods, goddesses, or one supreme creator. Now,
Yeah, that's pretty much it, isn't it? Those options.
exactly. There isn't any other option. Yeah. Now the problem I'm facing, the problem I'm facing with our atheist friends is that they have hit an impasse. They just cannot go further. What I mean by that is this: that if I am to take that reasoning on board that atheism has about everything being just a learned thing, okay, in a naturalistic way, yeah, rather than some external source perhaps engaging, yes, there is an impasse. That impasse is that, look, if the brain developed over time, then the question still has to be answered on how something that was inconceivable was conceived. Like I said, up to
Yes.
now, no atheist has been able to answer this question, and I don't think there is going to be an atheist who is going to be able to answer this question. Yeah, I mean, whenever I've engaged with our atheist friends, okay, the moment I introduce the yardstick, they disappear. They just leave the forum. Every time I have asked for a, sorry,
Yeah, they will usually say, you just provide the evidence to us and we'll make up our own minds. That's usually what they say. The onus is on you. You just show us what you've got.
Excellent point. But that is where they fall heavily. Because if you are going to say, just show us what you want, you are basically saying that your standard is subjective.
Yeah.
Because if 10 atheists came and 10 atheists have different ways of wanting to establish what they consider to be evidence, it's purely subjective. There is no objectivity behind what they are saying. And that is why I'm always seeking the yardstick, the standard by which we can produce the evidence for them to be satisfied. Now, there hasn't been one atheist, not one atheist has been bold enough or courageous enough to stand in front of me and say, here is the yardstick, let's go. Because if there is no yardstick, there is no measuring rod, how in the world are you going to provide the evidence? So to be honest with you,
true.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said, my intention is not to offend anyone, but I would say that our atheist friends have been taken for a long ride. They really have. And what is the cause of that? What is the cause of that? It is their own thinking processes, because their thinking processes are currently very primitive. And that is what I would say. Because look, when you want to discuss something, you must be reasonable about it. Yeah. I will say something. I used to visit Speaker's Corner for many years. Just as a side, yeah, I will tell you something, Elliot, that the standard of discussion has gone downhill rapidly at Speaker's Corner.
I think so. I've seen some of your old videos compared to now.
Yes.
I think so.
It has gone rapidly downhill. And why? Because all they want to do is score points, scream, shout at each other, become violent, some of them, and come with offensive T-shirts, talk about nonsense, have titles that are nonsensical. This is not how one conducts oneself. Yeah. However, going back to the point, you see, when we ask the question, did God create man or did man create God? Yeah. The second bit, did man create God, has to be considered in the light of the evidence that is available. And from what I am considering right now, all the evidence is actually pointing to the first part of the question. Did God create man? The evidence is actually pointing to that. It's not pointing to the other. However, if we take it a bit further, you see, Elliot, when an atheist asks me, look, you are making the claim, you provide the evidence. I then say, not a problem. Can you please give me the yardstick by which I need to understand what kind of evidence you require? Doesn't happen. There is absolutely no comeback from our atheist friends about the yardstick. No one just can provide it. Now, there are some atheists who do try and engage, but the first comment they will come with, oh, what Shabir is saying is silly. That's it. Yeah, okay. So can you, so I say, okay, can you please tell us what is silly? No response. Because again, we are talking about something that has to be established reasonably. We usually say logical, rational, and reasonable. Yeah, there are standards which I am actually flummoxed about when it comes to atheists. They don't want to be rational, they don't want to be logical, and they don't want to be reasonable. Now, would you engage with an individual who is irrational, illogical, and unreasonable? Usually the answer is no. But we relent and we try. Sorry?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So when I look at that first question, if I just take it a bit deeper, you see, we know that the brain has the capacity to conceive of things. Okay. My contention is that whatever is conceived is as a result of all the experiences that what we call the human mind has. Yeah. In neuroscience and psychology, they've got the theory of mind. Okay.
I've read about that,
yeah. So you see, it is everything about how the human mind actually does things. Yeah. The issue is this. Like I said, for us to answer this question, we need to look at how neuroscience. The word science, I always consider to be just a word meaning knowledge. Yeah. But for the purpose of understanding, if we were to say neuroscience is trying to work out how the brain actually functions, yeah, what areas fire up, why they fire up, etc., etc. Why is the brain divided into two hemispheres? The point is that whatever is initiating the firing of the neurons, yeah, and how language is understood, how the language is computed, how it is processed, because these are all electrochemical signals. Okay. But the brain's areas are working out things which then communicate with the vocal cords, with the voice box, and then intonations begin. Yeah. Now you are talking about an extremely complex thing like the brain, which I don't think have even understood 5%. Okay. Now, not only that, you must remember that all this has to go with the central nervous system. Okay. Now, when I said the evidence is all pointing to the first part of the question, did God create humans, or rather man? Yeah.
Yes.
You have the nervous system. Now, you must understand that all this has to work in tandem. Yeah. Our scientific fraternity in this part of the subject matter will usually say, by an accident this happened, by an accident that happened, by an accident this happened. Okay, not a problem. But now what we need to do. We really need to try and assess whether we are making sense when we say it happened by an accident. Fortuitously, it happened. Yeah, coincidentally, it happened.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, I can accept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but you know what? When you are talking in, and I mean into the millions, yes, then it becomes a bit
Yes.
irrational and illogical to continually state that these were just, accidents, mere accidents. They were only, coincidence. Come on. No one is going to accept that kind of reasoning. Yeah. But like I said, you're talking about the nervous system. Bear in mind that if we are to take the evolutionary perspective, Elliot, all this, what we would call different parts have to come together and work in an organized manner. Okay. And
Yeah.
this is supposed to have been done entirely blindly. Yeah.
Supposedly,
What
yeah.
I mean, yeah, supposedly blindly. Why? Because apparently evolutionary direction does not involve any intelligence prior. Yeah, it
No.
is just blind. Now, the evolutionary scientists, yes, have come up with ideas of what they think and how it happened. Yeah, like I've always quoted the book "Why Evolution is True" by Professor Jerry Coyne. Okay,
Yes.
you look at what he is saying in there, and if I were to ask Professor Coyne a question, when you are reasoning all this out, is it being done accidentally? Are you doing it blindly? Are you doing it coincidentally? He's not going to say yes, because if he does, then he needs to be, what can we say, put aside. No, the truth is, yeah, the truth is that no human being is going to say, oh, I just did it for the sake of it, and hey presto, everything worked out. Look, we also know that in medicine, some of the greatest discoveries that were made were as a result of, and they were searching for something
Accident.
else, but they found
Yes. Yeah.
something
Yeah.
else. Yeah. Now you look at that and you say, oh well, there you are. That is an example of how coincidences are meeting. Wait a minute. That is your information convincing you of something, and you are confirming it. Isn't that the accusation that is made to people who believe in a God? That you are
Yeah.
looking at things, yeah, and creating a situation. They call it pareidolia, where you actually see things and images into things where they are really not images. Okay? But if I were to look at this and ask the question, so does all the evidence that we currently possess suggest that the idea of a supreme creator, like I said, not gods, goddesses, godlings, godfathers, godmothers, god whatever, yeah, they are a byproduct of something. But when you are talking about a supreme creator, one that a human being cannot conceive of, how did we obtain this information? Now, I know, confidently I will assert, that the only place you will find an answer to this question is actually in the Quran. But we will get to that later. Yeah? The only place, and I'm making it sounds a bold claim, okay? But the only place you will find an answer to this question is actually in the Quran. And we will get to that later. Yeah.
Yeah.
However, when we are considering whether gods are an invention of human beings, I would actually agree. I would say gods are an invention of the human being. Once the human being had developed the capacity to discern. Yeah. Now, is that not a
Yes.
contradiction? Yeah. If I'm saying, well, God's, like I said, I made the distinction between a supreme creator and what human beings have understood. Yeah. Now, it's not a stretch of the imagination to understand that if a person is walking somewhere in a state of worry or fear, trips over a stone, and suddenly his what we call luck changes, okay? And he suddenly thinks, wait a minute, when I tripped over the stone, something good happened. Yeah? So he takes the stone, considers it a lucky charm, whatever lucky charms are,
Yes.
yeah? He takes it with him. And then what does he do? He puts it to test. He tries it again. And coincidentally, it worked. Now, this stone has become special to him. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, if he was to do this 10 times, 100 times, and each time things worked right, would you consider him a highly intelligent individual?
No.
What do you think? You wouldn't, would you?
Probably not. No.
Probably not. But the amazing
he's
thing
very lucky.
exactly. But the amazing thing is that the whole of the scientific world entirely bases their conclusions in terms of evolution on coincidences. Yeah.
Yes.
It is coincidental that this happened. There is no pre-planning. So anything that happened can be either as a result of an accident or coincidence. Now, if a person does the same thing with a rock, we will consider him to be irrational and unreasonable. But where it is garbed in particular language, we consider it to be worthy of potentially a Nobel Prize. Now, I am not in any way dismissing the learning that we have developed up to this day. I'm not doing that. I think the greatest thing we human beings have been given is the ability to want to find things out. And I highly encourage every human being to do that. But the thing I'm pointing out is where atheism is primitive in their understanding. Yes? Because if you are going to have one set of rules for one, you should equally have the same set of rules for the other. And as I pointed out about the example of this person with the rock, now, if he were to pass on his coincidental fortune to his son takes it to have a meaning which is not intended. Okay? But now, 4 or 5 generations down, it becomes a deity. Yeah? Logically speaking, that is what will happen. Yeah? There's a famous story where I've always narrated about, a village up in the mountains. And whenever they sat down, they used to have a small stick next to their plates and they used to eat. But as their society became more affluent, the generations that came after realized that they may have had a small stick because they were poor. Now that we are affluent, we can have bigger sticks. Yeah. So they started putting huge sticks next to their plates. Okay. Until one of them decided to ask, why did they used to have the stick there? And when he did the inquiries, he realized they were toothpicks. And they used to have them next to the place to use them. Now, these guys put a big one there. You can't do anything with it. So, yes, deities have been invented. We use the word invented, yes? But there is a logical step-by-step analysis you can make and you can arrive at that conclusion. However, when we are talking about a supreme creator, what's the distinction? I mean, why can't we just include the Supreme Creator also in the same vein? Well, the
That's what they
difference
say.
here, yeah, of course. But here, the difference here is this. And again, this is not offending anyone who is into idol worship, okay? But 99% of it is to do with actual vision, yeah? There must be something there. So you have got idols, okay? You have got statues of individuals, yeah? Now, how do you consider one that has no physical shape that is seen? How do you consider and view a being that, with our limited capacities, we cannot conceive of? Now, there's a central question which you asked at the start. How do you dismiss all these other belief systems? And when I use the word dismiss, again, not lightly, yes, in the context of the
Yes.
discussion. When we are dismissing them, or we are excluding them rather, okay, because they are worshipping something that is clearly visible, okay?